Is it ever justifiable to use debatable methods to get the best out of a horse before or during competition?
Right. Well, Will, it had competition in the question, so you can get on with that one.
Well, I suppose by the nature of the question that said debatable means that some of these methods are debatable. And if you bring a bunch of coaches into a room, one coach's sworn way of getting a horse to go better is another coach's pet hate, and I think that's the nature of coaching horses, where the horse can't talk back to you. But it's great that the UK coaching certificates have generated a lot of debate around core coaching ethoses and beliefs, and I think that's really helped move the discussion forward. But of course we're talking, I guess, about roll cur and wrapping sensitivity and some of those sort of things, and I would absolutely say that a training method that causes pain and discomfort in a prolonged way is not acceptable. That said, there are situations, not at the top level, of course, I think, where a horse needs squaring up, to use a colloquial term, especially if that horse is being ridden by a novice rider, and perhaps 5 minutes squaring up by an experienced rider will give that horse a future. A horse that naps continually every time it leaves the yard is of no use to the novice rider. And I think that as long as that's done in moderation by someone who knows what they're doing, then that is acceptable. I think that the Olympics did show that the British dressage riders especially, which is where an area where there has been a lot of debate, gained a lot of recognition and credit for their training methods and the way they produce their horses, which was done in a very sensitive and correct and traditional manner. And I think the results showed the benefits of those training methods, and some of our coaches in dressage are leading change on a global basis, and certainly people like Carl Hester are respected around the world, and consequently I can now never get hold of him. There was, for those of you unfortunate enough to have nothing else to do except for follow forums, you'd have seen a great deal of debate about roll cur or hyperflexion. Of course, hyperflexion is used in most sports. It's an accepted form of training and warm up and warm down in most sports. And those were based around 2 or 3 still photographs. I don't know how you can judge what someone's doing by still photographs. There were more stewards at the Olympics than there were squirrels in Greenwich Park, and that's saying something. And to really think that with all the expertise was there, that we'd have allowed another nation to try and gain an advantage through some dodgy training method is quite crazy. It simply wouldn't have happened. But I think that sometimes also a quick, sharp lesson is better than 45 minutes going round and round in circles in an indoor school with bad ventilation. So by the nature of the question, they are debatable sometimes on the very edge. But I think that sport, especially the leadership the FEI has given this, is very, very regulated now. There is a great deal of discussion, and at the centre of this is very much the horse's welfare. And I'd say we've got it about right in FEI sport.
Thank you. Well, we're very pleased to see the Secretary-General of the FEI sitting in the audience. Ingmar, lovely to see you here. Can I just, was it hyperflexion and wrapping roll cur that you were talking about in debatable methods, or were you is that what you meant in your questions? So broad range. So debatable methods could cover, it's quite, yeah, okay. Right, Anne, would you want to...
Yeah, I'd like to be a little controversial in that there's no point in sitting on a panel like this unless you are. I'm not competitive in any way, and I don't understand the methods that are used, and I was questioning in my mind what on earth this could mean. But I do know that I go to shows and I go to events, and I see horses being made to move in a way which is completely unnatural to a horse. If a horse is loose in a field, it doesn't tuck its chin to its chest and stare down at its toes. And I find the thought of tying horses down in those positions which are unnatural and which we all of us know from riding young horses sometimes causes them considerable discomfort in the neck, offensive. And I have a very good horse vet, very well-known horse vet, who I won't embarrass by naming, who says that a lot of the head-shaking cases he sees, he has absolutely no doubt, are a result of nerve damage from horses being made to do dressage and forced into unnatural positions. I wonder how long what we see now will go on. When you look back perhaps 50 years, horses weren't ridden in the positions and in the ways they are today. I'm sure they go better. It's lovely to ride a horse that's lovely light on the hand, and I dare say you can jump better and control the horse and make it do more. But are we asking horses to do things that they weren't actually built to do? And when things go wrong with them, when we do that, we shouldn't be surprised.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to, at the end of it, I'm going to ask Ingmar to come back on some of that. Paul, you'll go.
Well, I guess in terms of horse racing, what springs to mind are two things in terms of what you might term debatable methods, and that would be the use of medication and the use of the whip. So in Britain, we prohibit the use of any medication on race day, and our testing procedures are quite stringent. We tested about 8,000 horses out of roughly 90,000 runners last year. We had a very low positive rate of about 0.13% across the year, and most of those were actually medication where in effect the trainer had just given the horse medication and it hadn't come out of its system pre-race day. So that deals, and in a way Britain is world leading in that respect, and quite different to America, but very much aligned to the rest of the world. In terms of the use of the whip, which might be considered debatable by some, proud to say, as you know, having the responsibilities that I do, that Britain unarguably leads the world in terms of whip control and management of the use of the whip within races. As you noted earlier, we changed our rules a couple of times, about 12 months ago. We now allow half the number of hits that we allowed 12 months ago, and yet we've still seen a reduction in the number of incidents. So the riders themselves have applied themselves particularly well. We use padded whips. There is still some work for us to do. And importantly, we've seen the number of cases of markings or wheelings of the horses fall very significantly. From 90,000 runners, we've only had one identified marking in the last 12 months. So they would be the two most high profile within our sport. You know, continuing the work, but I would say people in this room should be proud of the position that Britain has on both of those elements.
Yeah, agree. Lucy.
Well, I working on Horse and Hound, we do hear we get quite a number of letters from people who are concerned, particularly the methods used in dressage. And vets do tell us that quite a high number of injuries coming through in dressage because people are desperately trying to achieve higher standards with horses that aren't necessarily engineered to produce that movement. So it's something to be very aware of. But I think one of the big changes in all these issues recently has been just the rise of social media and smartphones, and the fact that everybody at a horse event is a potential videographer these days. And that's both a good thing and a bad thing. I have great sympathy for the situations that Will has touched on already, where a still photograph is posted somewhere and a huge furore ensues. Even if stewards who know what they're doing have been at an event watching what's going on, people can be gunned down on the basis of one still photograph. But on the other hand, it can be a good thing because people have to be aware that there are eyes and recording equipment everywhere. You are in a very public environment and you will be watched, and there are people who will post and damn you if you're not working within proper guidelines and being really fair to your horse. So it's quite, you know, it's got a good side as well as a bad side. But it's something that I do ultimately have confidence in the FEI and the trickle-down effect through all our shows and all our societies, that they're doing a very good job overall, making sure that people are not using debatable methods. Of course, they will be somewhere at home sometime, but I think they're trying to manage it very rigorously.
Thank you, Lucy. Ingmar de Vos from the FEI, do you have a comment to make on what you've just heard?
Well, I think I'm very pleased with this debate, and I'm happy to learn that the efforts the FEI has done over the last years have been really appreciated. I think one of the things we are very happy with is that the sport, and especially in this case dressage, has grown enormously in popularity. So it's also a result of the success of our sport that we get more attention. And this, of course, leads to the fact that we need to be very careful how we handle this attention. And over the last years, we have done a lot of efforts in more clarifying rules, but also in the education of our stewards. And like Will said, there were a lot of stewards present in London, and they really know their job, but it's a continuous effort we have to do. But we are, of course, only responsible for what's happening during competition, when people are in competition. And I think there is a lot to be done in educating coaches, but also in creating an awareness of the whole equestrian community in order to improve training methods and in order to avoid abuse of horses. So, but we are really wanting to help this and to contribute to this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Connell. Any questions or comment from the floor before we move on to the next one? I got some. Yes, just one here.
Hello, yes, it's Mark Kennedy, World Society for Protection of Animals. Just a question for Will. Obviously, it's very important that in any forum we talk about objective facts. And it's just, obviously, you mentioned the 5 minutes of squaring up. And I think it's quite important that we make it very clear what you mean by squaring up. Because obviously, what one individual might mean, other individual might mean something entirely difficult. So if you could see what you mean by squaring up.
Yeah, I would refer to an experienced rider using the full range of the aids, including the whip. I wouldn't refer to ripping its teeth out, if you want to use a colloquial term. The use of the whip, short, sharp, to the point, in the right place, i.e. not round the head, but behind the saddle or on the shoulder, in order to get a message through to a horse that has shown it won't react to the first level, if you like, of training methods. The alternative is that the horse becomes of no use, and that in itself creates, in my mind, a bigger welfare problem. I'm not a parent, so I'm not going to go down that road. But you may know to what I refer. So yes, I'm not meaning the sort of beating of a horse till it incurs injury. I'm talking about the use of the full range of the aids, and I don't mean tying its head between its front legs, to some old-fashioned method like that. I mean the use of the aids by an experienced rider to deliver a short, sharp training message to the horse.
Thank you for clearing that one up.